الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنام وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise that's worthy of a beneficent bestower of mercies and wisdom and knowledge. And we ask our Lord Most High to send copious and eternal blessings and salutations upon our beloved Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we teach and learn, and we pay our respects to the elders past and present. So alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala faddalna, akramana, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He favored us, that He gathered us inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this place in order for us to benefit bi'idhnillah azza wa jal from those who He has also favored to be those who are the inheritors of prophethood. And in terms of the understanding that we may bi'idhnillah get from them, if we, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we take it bil-azm, if we take it with strength and with power, and if we take it, azm is a bit different to strength and power. If we take it seriously, one might say, if we take it seriously, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a word or a phrase or a statement or an explanation or a state, a spiritual state, may affect one that it changes their whole life completely, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. And we ask from Allah azza wa jal that He bestows upon all of us, inshallah, and those that are listening and those that are interested and those that intended to come but circumstances didn't allow them to come, to get that benefit, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. So in terms of the fitrah and in terms of the innate, the primordial state, however you want to define it, the fitrah, it's important always for us to look at in our deen what Allah Azza wa Jal says, if there's something in the Quran about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about that particular state. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the hadith, or one hadith in particular, relating to what the Prophet of Allah والسلام, has said about the fitrah, and then we'll delve into a little bit further the particular topics about careers, hobbies, extracurricular activities, and how they relate to the Sharia and the fitrah. I'll try and bring those two concepts together, so we're not talking about fitrah as one thing and the Sharia as another thing. So if we look at Surah Ar-Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse when the mushrikeen of Quraysh, of Makkah, they rejected the Prophet of Allah alayhi wasalam. And they didn't want to listen to him about the revelation, about Tawheed, about the unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, monotheism. And of course they wanted to do as they did their own thing. So the Prophet ﷺ was perturbed, he was disturbed, he was upset. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, he revealed the verse. He said, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. So turn your, and you know, of course, with the Quran, no matter what we try and say in English, we can never really get the reality, or we never can even get, you know, the insight into the Arabic, because that's where the i'jaz is, that's where the miracle is in the Arabic itself. So it's always difficult, but I'll do my best, inshallah azza wa jal. Turn your face, which means turn yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen. Turn away from what they're doing. Don't be perturbed by what everyone else is doing. And for us in our time, I think that's as relevant, if not more relevant, than maybe any other time before, because we're in, you know, fitrat al-duhaymat. We're in this, the Prophet ﷺ talked about different stages of the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He talked about subhanahu wa ta'ala how that, you know, the hadith says that yatakalam alaykum al-umam, that at the end of times, you know, you'll be a lot, you know, but kagutha as-sal will be huge in number, but will be like the foam on the ocean. If you ever go to the beach, which I recommend you do, and you see when a wave breaks, that white foam that comes onto the sand, what purpose does it serve? What power does it have? What does it do? Nothing really. So that's how we are. And you know, I don't like to get political, but I don't think we have any choice anymore. You know, we've always tried to be apolitical, but we don't. Look at us. Look at Palestine. Look at what's going on there, and what's going on with the rest of the ummah. No one can move. Hardly anyone can even speak when a'udhu billah azza wa jal. That's the time we're in. So turn away from all that. That's what Allah azza wa jal said to the Prophet of Allah sallam, and that's what He says to us. In terms, don't be affected by the propaganda, by the encouragement, by the, you know, the G'ing up, for use of an Aussie term, of what the rest of the world is saying. Don't sweat that stuff. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, أقم وجهك للدين حنيفا. And the ulama, they talk about hanif, yani it's to deviate away from it, in a sense, to Allah, to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. So that's the fitrah. Yeah? The fitrah of human beings, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fataraha, created. Now there's two almost synonymous terms. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fatara samawat, khalaqa samawat. They're both used in the Quran. And read for pages and pages and pages, and scholars, they had different interpretations. The khalasa is when Allah khalaqaha, Allah created us as human beings, for example. We can't become another creature. We can't turn ourselves into another creature. We can't become a tiger, although people try, and they may think they are, and that's something they've got to contend with, but we can't. I can't grow wings, or there might be some genetic mutations, there might be some anomalies, but the vast majority, that's the khalq of Allah. He created it that way, and basically it's going to stay that way. Fatara is that Allah made it that way, but it's qabil al-taghayyur. It's the capacity, there is potential for it to change, like the nafs. Allah was always said, fataraha allati fatara an-nasa alayha. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us, made ourselves, made our being. It's like a lock, and the key is the deen. That's the key. That unlocks our innate states, our primordial states, our nature. I'm just going to use the word nature. I don't like to use big words as much as possible. So our nature, that's our nature. And our nature is built to accept the key of Islam. Any other key, and that's what he says, لا تبديل لخلق الله. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Can't change the way Allah has created you. There's no tabdil. You can't bring an alternative. So the lock of who we are, our nature, the key of Islam goes into that lock, and then whatever potential we have, whatever heights bi'idhnillah azza wa jal we want to reach, whatever illumination that Allah azza wa jal is going to give us, we'll get. And what's that about? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. He says in a different verse that we were only created to worship Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's our fitrah. That's our nature. That's how we're made. That's how we're made. And I can give heaps of examples. Like one time, I grew up on the North Shore, and it's very hard. There was no masajid and all these sorts of things there. So one time I was just praying in the park, and I was wearing, it was a Friday, I was wearing sunnah, it was like Asr time, and I was just praying in the park, and this little kid, I could hear him walk up with his dad. Those who know me will know that I've said this story many times. It's one of my all-time favourites. And then I could hear the little kid going, "Daddy, what's that man doing?" And then the father goes, "He's praying, son." And then he goes, "Daddy, who's he praying to?" And he goes, "Son, he's praying to God." And then the kid goes to his father, "Why don't we pray to God, Dad?" His little, however old he was. That's our nature. That's how we're made. He made us that way. فَطَرَنَا خَلَقَنَا subhanahu wa ta'ala. He created us in that manner. And any other way, try anything else. Try, go like, yeah, all right, that's what I was saying at the beginning. The modern world, I gave the example of Palestine because it's a burn. Yeah, who can enjoy anything when that's happening with our brothers and sisters? And it's not the only place, but it's the head of all the bala, all the trials and tribulations, and when a'udhu billah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, what's going on? What have human beings tried? Everything they've tried, where's it led to? What's it led us to? It's led us to dalala, wa na'udhu billah azza wa jal. Misguidance. And then we've had to look at other things to bring us back to our state, our nature. And all these things taking us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All those things taking us away from who we are. Nasullaha fa'ansahum anfusahum. They forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning they forgot themselves. They forgot that we don't even know what we are anymore. Look, I'm not trying to disparage anyone. I'm just trying to make a clear, simple example. We don't know who we are anymore as human beings. We don't even know what it means to be a human being anymore. It's just about gathering more things and having more status and having more likes and, who has the biggest bank account. And that's what we've become. We've forgot what it really means to be a human being. And he says, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. That is the proper way. The deen, way of life. That's what deen means, the way of life. From the time of Sayyidina Adam Till now, that's all called deen, whatever the shariahs that have come with. And then he says, what? وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Most people don't even know. And that's the important thing for us when it comes to our fitrah. And I was going to talk about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, وَمَا مِن مَوْلُودٍ إِلَّا يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ فَأَبَوَاهُ يهودان أو ينصران أو يمجسان, which is exactly the same thing. The Prophet just gives alayhi salatu wasalam, sallu ala rasulillah, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, salli wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. He just gives it in another way. So basically he says that same thing, that each and every single one of us were created to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's our nature. That's what we're about. That's what gives us comfort. That's what gives us happiness. That's what gives us peace. That's what gives us ease. That's what gives us tranquility. That's what makes us feel fulfilled. And then he says, but up to his parents, and the scholars talk about it. They say not just the parents, but the environment. They either make him, Yahudi, Nasrani, Christian, Jew, Majusi, or whatever's going on these days, which is even, you might even say, worse than all of these things, atheism and whatever else, pantheism and the isms. So it's the same thing. Same thing, that it's learned. And both are learned. There's no point, like there's a thing called Ahl al-Fitrah, where the scholars talk about the people that have never received any revelation. And, there's scholars say different things about it, but they get asked on the Day of Judgment, inshallah, Azza wa Jalla, they get to choose. Of course, they're going to choose Allah. But that doesn't really apply to our situation or the people that we know, or the circumstances that we're in, or the sphere that we can influence, or our sphere of concern even. So they're very few, if any, on the face of the earth anymore. So for us, it's not for us to say that my fitrah or our fitrah is like that, because it's a learned thing. The fitrah is created and it has the potential. And what allows it, it's like an engine. The fitrah is the engine. It's created in a particular way of a car. Either it takes diesel or it takes petrol, and these days runs on electricity. So the engine is there, made in a particular way. And it's what fuel you put into it that determines whether it works properly or otherwise. And that's how we are. And our fuel in that same sense is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's actually the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that determines what the fitrah is. It's not that the fitrah, we can work it out. I mean, look, there always is. There's always in our deen places for surveys and places for research and places for all these kind of things. But the asl, the foundation of all these things is in our deen, is what Allah Azza wa Jal has told us about ourselves. Because if anyone's ever been sick, la samahallah, or their parents have been sick, la samahallah, or someone's close to you has been sick, go to the doctors. Go. What do they come up with most of the time? They can tell you what you haven't got. You haven't got typhoid, and you haven't got pneumonia, and you haven't got whooping cough. But what do you have? We don't know. We don't know. So the height of our science and the height of our the trillions of dollars that are dumped into it, and etc. and etc. and etc. and etc. It's very limited. And one time I met this professor. And I forget the exact, because it was so daqiq. And he was a professor about cells. And one of the other very intelligent people, asked him about a particular aspect of a cell. And he said, look, that's not really my area of, well, I freaked out. That's not really my particular area of expertise. And I didn't understand, it was way above what I knew about anything to do with science or cells. But what struck me, and then he said, oh, we've only just scratched the surface. He was the #1 world's expert. And he said, we've only just scratched the surface. He didn't even answer the guy's question because it wasn't his area. And this is the #1. So if we're going to look just at the outside things, we're not going to find out truly what our fitrah is. Yet if we look at the sharia and we use these research and that's what we ought to be doing, rather than spending money on gold-plated Bentleys or whatever the latest, it's not Bentleys anymore, it's the other car, whatever it is, and gold-plated toilets and taps and things. We should be using, Muslims, that is, who have the capacity, should be using our funds to look into the Sharia to see what the answers are to the ills that we have. And that brings us to the next issue, our jobs our careers, our occupations, our vocations. Because unfortunately or fortunately or misfortunately or unfortunately, that's us in this world in which we live in, us in the West. However we think we are, whatever we think we're about, it's about the dunya. It doesn't matter. It's like the Prophet said about the hadith, alayhi salatu wasalam, the interest, it'll be everywhere, and if you're not involved in it, the dust will reach you. Well, we're pretty dusty, very dusty. And it's hard. Every time you dust your left shoulder off, your right shoulder comes dusty. Every time you touch, that's the way it is. Because what in the society we live in, and it's a question, it's not a rhetorical question, what in the society we live in leads us to spirituality. Where's the call to spirituality anywhere in our society? Whether it's on TV, no one watches TV, whether it's on, social media, where? There's nothing, there's no drive at all. Zero drive whatsoever. And if anyone's spiritual, don't worry about religion, just someone spiritual, what do we call them? Oh, they used to, I don't know, my day, which was a long time ago, hippies, they used to call them, hippies. They're a bit weird, like they walk around without their shoes off and, they're not really interested in making billions of dollars and becoming the next, star billionaire and, flying somewhere above the stratosphere or whatever it might be. They're not interested in, they're weird. So where is it? Where is it that this being that has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's in essence spiritual, that has a physical form, if there's no spiritual shahan, there's no spiritual power, there's no spiritual charge, diesel, petrol, electricity, what's happening to the human being? Physical, whatever you want. If you look on social media, even if you're not interested, you'll see, social, what are they called? Fitness influencers and people telling you they know nothing about exercise. And then what? This person says something and this person will talk 20-minute video against what they've said that's wrong. And this person will fire back. And then it's there everywhere. Money, you want to talk about money, who are the people we look up to? Names I don't want to mention, but I don't need to mention the billionaires and they did this and then we've got all the other, so without going to, you understand. I don't need to go into any, just to so for us, we have a dearth of spirituality. And once you start to speak about anything spiritual, all of a sudden that individual's shunned. That individual's put to the side, or those group of people, look what they're saying about us Muslims because we don't have premarital sex and whatever because it doesn't align to the debauchery, so that's not ethics. You can't call that ethics anymore. Look what's happening. Because it's a spiritual, there's no money, you can't control that. Everyone has their own path to it. Everyone has their own way to it. So when it's not there. So it's extraordinarily difficult. Yeah, don't think it's like I'm going to come up here and say, follow Allah and His Rasul and it's going to be easy. No, it's not. I'm really sorry. It's not. One of the Mashaykh of Damascus, he was asked, and this is like 50 years ago, he was asked by one of the awliya. He's not just a sheikh, he's a wali, he's a friend of Allah, he's a saint. And one of his students said to him, Sheikh, are we living in the time, this is 50 years ago, mind you, are we living in the time where the believer who's holding on to their deen is like the one holding on to a hot coal? Excuse me. And he said, no, my son, we're living in a time where the believer sleeps a believer and wakes up a disbeliever. That was 50 years ago. That was before the internet. That was before that we had our wonderful, we don't have to be smart anymore because we got it. It's smart for us. You don't need to be smart. Before we had all these things, that's what was being said by the scholars. So, and that's one side. Yeah, and there's the other thing, which is we're talking about the other side is, man, it's crazy to live in this country now. You yourselves would know about it as much, and if not more than me. Who's even thinking about buying a house? And that's one of the 5 things the scholars say. It's a fitrah. It's a basic necessity. Mankah, malbas, manzil. It's a bare necessity. I don't know if any of you think, I'm not, that's way. Who's going to afford the most ordinary house in Sydney plus $1 million and it's junk and you can't even get in anyway? So we're living in a time where things are so expensive and inflation is non-stop, and guess what? It's not going to get any better. So that's the situation we're in. That's the difficulty that we're facing. We want to maintain our spirituality. We want to maintain our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in reality, if we really could, we want to be full-time, all the time Muslims, including at work. On the other side, what are you going to sell? That's the word. What are you going to give up to live, to eat, to drink? And there's going to come a time where, as the Prophet mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, you have to go to the mountains, and what's the food going to be? Subhanallah, the food. Isn't no joke. The food is going to be Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. That's going to be our sustenance. It's going to be, unless you're with the Dajjal, you can't eat. You can't eat. So that's the reality. This is the fitna that we live in. The Prophet mentioned, duhayma. It's blind, it's dumb, that's it. And unfortunately, what did he say? وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Most people, they just don't know. They're not even into it. But we have a clue at least. We have some sort of an inkling. So when it comes to our work and what we're going to do, I wanted to split it up in two categories. Because there's a difference in our deen in terms of what the Sharia is, in terms of the responsibility of men and the responsibility of women. And I don't say males. A male is just, I don't know, it's controversial if I define a male, so maybe I shouldn't. But there's a difference in Islam. In our deen, there's a difference between a male. A male is a person and male, whether they're adult or non-adult, it doesn't matter, but they have the genitalia of a man. A man, of a male. A man is someone who carries responsibility. Ar-rijal. Ar-rijal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in the verse that I'm not really going to refer to, but that's the subtext of what I'm saying. He says, Ar-rijal qawmuna ala nisa. He says that men are the empowerers of women. He doesn't say subhanahu males. There's a big difference. There's a humongous difference. There's a ginormous difference between a male and a man. And whoever, sisters who have been divorced, brothers, whoever's dealt with some guy, if they're not a man, you just like, talk to the hand. I don't want to deal with you. Go do something else with someone else away from me. So the men in Muslim society, they're responsible in terms of, and I don't think occupation is the right word. I don't think occupation, but we'll just use it anyway. So that's our responsibility. 2 minutes. So that's our responsibility as inshallah we're men. Our responsibility is whether we dig a ditch, whether we chop something, whether we weld something, whether whatever it is. The responsibility of the man is to provide for his women folk, for himself and his women folk. And the Prophet ﷺ came into the masjid and he saw a man, his hands were all, calloused and, they were all calloused, and he kissed them, alayhi salatu wasalam. Believe that. He kissed them. He said, Allah loves these hands. Allah loves these hands because he's not begging. And there's honor in working. And all the prophets worked. All the prophets, they were either shepherds or like Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, he was the first one to work with metal. So for a man, he's got to get out there and do whatever he has to do. If he can, in this society, if he can be educated and have a career, or if he can get a license and become a tradesperson, that's my advice on those two things. And it has to be, and to work, to look after one's family is jihad fi sabilillah. That's the responsibility, whatever that might be. And as was said by the Sheikh previous to myself, that when you find a brother of those of the sisters who aren't married that has sacrificed and been disciplined and be able to achieve something like have a career or have a trade, that's the brother, as long as he's praying, of course, that's the brother to go for. Because the bloke can get things done, bit in the Azza wa Jal. The guy that's just been, bumming around for however long, and then all of a sudden he found din in his mid-20s and he was party boy or whatever back in the day, and now he's a good bloke, I'd say be wary. Be very, very wary. For the sisters, it's different. Unless there is no one to spend on her, of the males, or the men, then she's not obliged to work. So she can have a vocation. That's where the difference lies. She can, and I don't know but she can change the world. She can change the world. The brother's got to dig the ditch. She's got no choice. Whatever he has to do to bring something home to feed his family. But she can change the world. And in terms of the innate state of human beings, we look at Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ and Sayyidina Khadija. She's the ultimate example. When he was panicking, straight up, ﷺ, when he was perturbed and upset and nervous when Sayyidina Jibreel came to him in the ghar, in the cave, where did he run to? He didn't run to his best mate. Didn't run to his BFF. Who did he ran to? His wife, because she was solid, as was mentioned by the Sheikh previous. She was solid. She wasn't this, ditz, with all due respect, who had different intentions. She knew what she was about, and she knew who he was, and she stood by him, and she's the one who gave him the thubut. He said to Zammilini Dathirini, hold me, envelop me. And she said, no, you're a good bloke. You're a top bloke. You look after the orphans. You do all these wonderful things. There's no way what came to you was evil. And she gave him that strength. So who changed the world? How? So that's my advice. Change the world. And then when we look at hobbies, which we don't have time for, my bad, hobbies and extracurricular activities. What are hobbies for? Why do we do a hobby? To get back to ourselves, to leave the stress. So do a hobby that takes you back to Allah. Pick a hobby that takes you back to whatever it might be. Now today, as we're saying, one day they're gonna Coles and Woolies and all that. You won't be able to afford it. So maybe do something like permaculture, or learn how to get some chickens, something, something fun like that. If you have an apartment, that might be difficult, but you can still do it. They've got those towers, you can grow things. The other things to do, for men in particular, because we have the protection function, be strong. Yeah, don't be a wuss. Don't be a wimp. Be strong. Don't be skinny and not fat like me. Don't be like that. Be strong. Deadlift 150 kilos, 20 pull-ups, swim. As the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, archery, and Sayyidina Umar said later, horse riding, these things. Be tough, bro. Be tough. Be able to handle a situation, la samah Allah, la qaddar Allah, if it arises. And the sisters, what did he say, alayhi salatu wasalam? He said, ni'mah, the best time a woman can spend is a spindle. I don't know if you know this. I had to look it up. I didn't know what it was, to tell you the truth. It's like, they used to do wool and cotton and things like that. That's the best time she could spend. I think they call it a trad wife these days. Am I right? I know, but I'm just joking around with you. So what? The shampoo, go, whichever shampoo you have at home, go and research. I'll give you a guarantee, ironclad guarantee. I'm a lawyer, we don't give those very often. That whatever shampoo company has been sued, and they've paid somebody off because it's poison. It's actually poison. The dish soap that we use at home to clean our dishes, have a look, just read it. If you drink a thimble of that, a little bit, you'll die. Every day we're putting it on our dishes, and the dishwasher ones are even worse. So if Allah has given you the capacity where you don't have to work, right? And I know it's like, I know, and I've seen it, and I think it's bad, that women, they're the ones who put other women down, like, oh, what? You're a stay-at-home wife. You're not good enough. But if a woman, just like Sayyidatuna Khadija, can make those things at home so that the family's healthy, so no one's getting poisoned. So that doesn't mean you don't get educated. Must get educated. Must be educated. It's preferably in the deen, but they're the type of things that we need to think about if we want to fulfill the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, that He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I've only created jinn kind and humankind to worship me. That way, inshallah, our whole life will be worship. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam.